Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? I saw a couple have a full-blown argument in the middle of the restaurant. The woman stood up, took her ring off, threw it at him and walked out. The man continued his meal, had dessert and then paid the bill, left a pretty big tip for the inconvenience and left. She does this sometimes, sorry everybody. I once ended up in a burrito place at 2 a.m. talking with a guy who was just casually managing his fiance's drunken breakdown because she accidentally ordered peppers. The guy seemed tired. Well, it was 2 a.m. He looks at her, stoic. And while she orates. A blister of bluster. That rarely abates. A frenzy of fury. And hatred and bile. He sips at his drink. And he waits for a while. He watches. She spells out the way that she feels. He picks up his fork. And he picks at their meals. She throws him her ring. And she leaves him and then Dottie whispers. How splendid. It's this shit again. I've done this once. We were having a drink and I don't even remember what I said. My boyfriend got really pissed and just walked away. Not a big loud argument, but there was a bit of cutting remarks. After he left, I slowly finished my drink and left, 15 minutes after him. I didn't want people to figure out that he left me there like an idiot, so I just tried to act normal, plus there wasn't a single chance that I was going to run after him. You waited. Username does not check out. I was once having dinner with my then girlfriend. She was in the middle of a scholarship application process, and mid-dinner she received a phone call. She had to hand in some papers before an office closed that day. She apologized and ran to her house to get the papers. I stayed, finished my dinner and asked for takeaway for her. When the waitress brought me the bill, she gave a piece of cake, saying her manager was sorry for me. I took the cake home and shared it with my girlfriend. 2 failed marriage proposals on the same Valentine's Day. The first one simply said no, I can't do this, and walked out. The second one stared like a deer frozen in the headlights for an excruciating 30 seconds before muttering, let's talk about this later. They stayed for the rest of their 6-course V-Day special dinner, eating and making painful small talk. I always wonder about couples like this. How could the guy be so off the mark as to not know if his GF will say yes? Do they not communicate? Is she pretending to like him more than she does? These are questions I need answers to. Hey man, don't judge, lots of people make mistakes on first dates. Classic schmosby. Mosbius Designs has failed. Poor impulse control and not thinking through all the possible outcomes. I know pop culture views it as romantic, but I tend to think proposing in a public place is sort of a dick move to begin with. You're basically forcing the person you're proposing to look like a jerk in front of strangers if she or he says no. Unless you've discussed it beforehand and know it's a yes. Where and when can be a surprise, but not that there is going to be a proposal. If you aren't 100% certain the person will say yes, then your relationship is nowhere near a point where getting engaged is an option. And definitely not ready for a proposal in a public setting. It wasn't disastrous for the couple as much as it was the restaurant. I used to work at a small southeastern franchise restaurant. It wasn't anything you could mistake for upscale. We had someone call in and ask if we could fry the ring he was planning to propose with in a hush puppy. Extremely weird request, but we said sure. They come in to eat with their families, she gets her order of hush puppies, doesn't choke on the ring and seems excited enough. Stayed at the table for about 2 hours total and chatted. They dined and dashed. Edit. Had no idea there would be a ton of confusion over what a hush puppy was. In America, or at least the South, a hush puppy is a fried ball of cornmeal. I promise it tastes better than what it sounds like. Also, for all those asking, it was a place called the Shrimp Basket. It's a pretty small franchise. Sorry to break the hearts of all those that were guessing Waffle House or Captain D's. I have a great idea, he said. And grinned with glee and stared ahead. To where, in front, his bride-to-be was all he had the eyes to see. I'd like to start the future we. The future you. The future me. By blowing off the bill, the bar. To show the world how shit we are. For after all, he said with cheer. We are a pair of assholes, dear. It's time we left. It's time we flew. Do you agree? She said. I do. Wow. The nerve of some people. Since he called in, would Op have been able to use the phone number to call back and demand money? If you're the kind of person who's going to dine and dash the restaurant you propose in, I'm not sure a phone call from the restaurant is going to scare you into coming back and paying. I worked at a chain restaurant that is generally considered really classy or not classy at all. Basically it was a normal chain restaurant, but it tended to be a bit more expensive than Applebee's or Fridays. We got a few proposals. I always felt bad judging, because for some of them, being able to treat a group of people at this place was making it in their minds, and sometimes we'd get a couple that really seemed like they would normally go to a nicer place, but that restaurant was their first date. No dine and dashers though. Edit. Really don't know why I was coy about the place, it's been a while since I worked there, it's Red Lobster. Hell, this was before the new parent company bought it, so it's not like I am worried about pissing off old bosses. I am a bartender but happen to be the one on the date for this particular disaster. So anyone in the service industry knows, you generally just do not make plans on certain holidays because you will have to work, no matter what. I had not had a date on Valentine's in probably 7 years, so when my boss gave me the day off I was surprised and posted something dumb on Insta about it. I got a DM from a girl I knew but not very well, asking me out for Valentine's, and she was way cute, so I figured why the fuck not. Things went so wrong, so quickly. We get to the restaurant, grab a drink in the bar while we wait on our table, took a shot to get the social lubricant flowing, since we don't really know each other very well. I pay our bar tab, and we move to the table. To set the scene a bit, this place is a really nice steakhouse, and they have these dark red, diamond pattern booths that are fluffy, with buttons at each point of the pattern. Hard to explain, but it looks something like this. The moment we sit down, my date lets out a blood-curdling scream like she had just been stabbed. She grabs her arm and her hand comes away covered in blood, and she looks so confused and I have no idea what the fuck just happened. I look around thinking someone just stabbed her, but everyone around us is seated just staring over at us. I move over to her side of the booth and grab the napkins off the table to find where she is cut. The entire back of her upper arm is sliced from elbow to shoulder. One of the buttons had broken off of the wall, and the snapped metal fastener was exposed, so when she sat down her arm ran all the way down along it. She is panicking, I am trying to stop the bleeding, while the people around us figure out what is going on and call 911 for us. The manager comes over and is immediately a defensive asshole until he sees that it was his booth that did the damage. The paramedics show up, I get the owner's info from the manager, and we spend the night in the ER, where she needed something like 80 stitches. We both are exhausted at this point when a guy walks in with flowers, champagne and a bag of takeout food from the restaurant we had left. It was the owner of the restaurant coming to make sure we could have the Valentine's meal we had missed out on. Sure, it was probably because he was afraid to get sued, but it was still really welcomed after how shitty the night had become so quickly. She and I ended up dating for almost 3 years and became good friends with the owner. Such good friends she ended up banging him, and that was the last I heard from either of them. Woo, Valentine's. I have stuck to working those nights ever since. The end. Edit. I would like to sincerely thank the people going through my comment history and messaging me things like maybe if you didn't play so many video games like a manchild, then you wouldn't get cucked. You guys are making my fucking night and it is hilarious. How dare people enjoy things. This story is an emotional roller coaster. Love it. This story gave me whiplash. Truly a literary masterpiece. I walked up to a table and was about to drop off the bill, caught the end of it's over. Guy looked at me dead in the eye and said to split that F check right now. That is actually hilarious, and good on him for not paying for someone who dumped him. And good on him for not paying for someone who dumped him. Now I'm reminded of my ex. We were together for over 6 years, living together, and we had begun to plan a wedding. Her car died, so I bought her one of her choice. I gave her a $20K limit to use however she wanted. New, used, whatever. She wanted something small and easy to drive with good storage space, so she chose a brand new Scion XD. $16.5K. We drove 4 hours to the next state to get one in the color that she wanted. A few months later she's leaving me for the guy who she had been cheating on me with. And this guy was married and cheating on his wife to be with her, too. Well, here's this brand new car. It was in my name. I was making the payments. And she's leaving me to go be with this mutual cheater. I told her that she had 2 options regarding this car. She could either get a loan to purchase this car off of me, or I'm taking the car back. I'm not going to pay $18,000 after interest for a car for you now. She wasn't happy about this. She was also using my old cell phone at the time since she broke hers. I told her that I wanted my phone back too. After I got it back I looked at what she left on it. She deleted the contact of her new cheater fuckboy, but the text messages remained. I knew his number so it was easy to see who she was talking to. She was saying to him that I was driving her crazy about this car and that I wouldn't just leave her alone about it. She was angry that I wasn't going to just keep paying for it. You think that you can leave me for the guy that you were cheating on me with and that I'm still going to pay for this brand new car of your choice for you? Are you kidding me? Not really a disaster, but this guy came in and said he was waiting for his date. He stayed for 5 hours waiting and she never showed. He eventually ordered four for himself and asked that I remove the other glass of water from the table. He said it was their first date. At that point, doesn't that make him the waiter? Dad. Damn, why would you wait for 5 hours? I'm out of there after 30 minutes. Same. Half an hour, no show. Not wasting any more time. I'd wait an hour. She could be on daylight saving time. You laugh, but this actually happened to me. Thought I got stood up for the first time by an American girl. Turns out we had just switched to summertime in France. She didn't know. Not a total disaster, but still not good. Had a table of 2 people, probably in their mid-40s last year. Took 45 minutes for this couple to get their entrees due to our kitchen being way too slammed. When they were dropped at the table, they immediately asked for to-go boxes because they told their babysitter they'd be home by a certain time. I overheard the wife say, well, I guess this is why we don't celebrate Valentine's Day. The worst part was that they weren't angry, just very sad. My personal feelings about dining out on Valentine's Day aside, I felt so horrible that this couple clearly had put in an effort to have a nice night with each other, only to have it go that way. We comped their meals, by the way. Edit. To clear up some timing issues. I should have added more context to this the first time, but wanted to keep it simple. They made a reservation, but unfortunately got seated about 10 minutes late. They ordered a round of drinks while looking over the menu, then a salad course, and then entrees. So at the point their entrees arrived, they had already been in the restaurant for close to an hour and a half. As a mom of 3 who rarely gets to go on dates with my husband, this just made me so very sad. I feel their disappointment in my soul. Nice that at least they got their meal comped. Kudos to you and your manager. Smiley. That said, I bet they planned for a while to get the time and probably haven't had a date in a while. A 16-year-old boy proposed to a 15-year-old girl with a cheap ring and the whipped cream of her dessert. She said yes. So romance isn't quite dead yet. Don't you know what happens when kids that young get married? It's all romance until the mutual suicide. At least their families might stop their bloody feud. I was working as a waitress in a sushi restaurant and Valentine's Day was an all-hands-on-deck shift. This guy I had just started seeing wanted to go out, but I told him that working in food service, you never get Valentine's Day off and we'd just have to celebrate the day after or the weekend after. Nope. He got so upset that he went and asked a different girl out, came to the restaurant I worked at on V-Day and sat in my section. He then proceeded to spend the entire evening making a fool out of himself and making his date uncomfortable as he tried to make me jealous. Needless to say, we didn't go out again. Ever. If he had surprised you at work and brought a couple friends that didn't have dates for dinner so that he could still see you on Valentine's Day, he'd have earned 1,000,000 points. But nope. Not only did he get mad over something stupid, he blew it with 2 women at once. Honestly, I'm kinda fucking impressed. That's obviously insane level of confidence. Edit. Gotta love being exhausted and thinking you typed out words that were in your head. Totally. When I first saw him getting seated by the hostess, I thought he was coming to surprise me and I thought it was so sweet. Then the awful reality slowly dawned on me. My coworkers were just as livid once they realized what was going on. Jesus. May I ask how old he was? We were both in our early 20s. Bullet dodged. Saw a couple have a full-on argument at a restaurant. I wasn't their server, but the table was directly in the center of the restaurant and they were certainly loud enough for everyone to hear. My manager kindly asked them to leave and the guy's response was to yell, "I've been wanting to do that shit for 2 years now," and stormed out. That's a really good comeback though. He nailed that exit. It was like a movie. I was bartending at an Italian restaurant, not a fancy one, but still, and it's pretty much full of Valentine's dates. A guy walks in and sits at the bar by himself, looking pretty down. He asked for a whiskey, so I poured it, told him it was on the house because he looked like he needed it. He proceeds to tell me his story. He had come to the city to surprise his girlfriend for Valentine's, about a 5 hours bus trip between cities, and he sure surprised her. She was in her dorm room fucking one of his friends from high school. He didn't know what to do, so he just walked into the first place that sold alcohol. I spilled as much whiskey as he wanted and watched the Raptors with him. Never saw him again. It's cliché, but it happened. Edit. Watch the Raptors isn't a euphemism. We watched a basketball game. I know we have the benefit of hindsight, but I can't help feeling like it's a terrible idea to have a fair on Valentine's Day in a place where your so could conceivably find you, even if they live 5 hours away. Edit. Yes, cheating is bad, I just get amused by how cheaters choose to navigate their already risky situation. Go big or go home, I guess. Don't cheat, folks. To be fair, she lived on campus, so probably first year. Teenagers aren't the best at foresight and subtlety in my experience. Still a pretty terrible idea though. Back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants, I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally, I get to the end and ask if there are any allergies. She looks directly at her boyfriend and states, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish." Then looks over at me very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her. But it was that look of "we've been dating a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me" that really did it for me. That reminds me when my parents got me a huge strawberry-filled cake with strawberries on it for my 25th birthday. I'm deathly allergic to strawberries. So, did they have a life insurance policy on you or something? 25 is the last year a lot of insurance plans cover your kids. I'm sure that's just a coincidence though. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there, it was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant including the bar and patio from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude however kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer and how his date is going to be there at 7, he got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table, but because the amount of reservations we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50 the guy loses it, fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete shit because the only copy of the reservations for the night that is barely half over is gone. 2 of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back, but by the time they got out he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant and the dude shows back up, saying he has a reservation for 2. 3 of the 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man, TLDR, salty dude without reservation steals reservation book and then tries to come back later at it. If anyone wants to use this for a sitcom, feel free, just let me reprise my role as the waiter and we can call it even." All I can picture is this dude thinking that he can get his way by essentially reenacting the restaurant version of that joke urban legend, with a university student who finishes his exam late and when the proctor won't accept it, the student asks, "Do you know who I am?" Then, when told no, he grabs the stack of exam booklets and flings them into the air and runs out. Depends on who you ask as to whether or not this is a disaster. Place I worked at in college was a pretty nice establishment and a romantic destination because our view overlooked the entire city. It was also located at the top of a 5-star hotel that had several projectors cycling through what was going on around the hotel in the lobby. There was no footage from the gym or pool, so it was relatively tame and never a privacy issue. Best you'd ever get were people eating, walking around the lobby or drinking at the bar. Anyway, guy walks in with his wife and asks to be seated in a secluded area. Well, you can imagine since it's busy and Valentine's Day we didn't have those, so he basically waited an extra hour to make sure he was seated in the back corner. Thinking nothing of it, I go to the bar to get the drink and see all of my coworkers huddled around the monitor above the bar, along with everyone else in there. Sure enough, I found the husband as he was underneath the table going down on his wife. Only problem was the camera above their table had a clear view because it was situated in the corner. So now the entire hotel lobby can see as it cycles between us and the bar, laughing, people checking in and our romantic couple dining on each other. More and more people start to notice and the bar fills up. This includes back of the house staff like dishwashers and the line cooks. Eventually it also brings out my manager, who runs over to their table, tells them what happened and they both run out mortified. But before they do, the husband tries to stand up too quickly and flips the table, ruining all the plates, while also exposing that his fly was down and his dick is out. He's yelling at my manager, the hotel manager, who came up when he saw it in the lobby, and security unzipped as he's escorted out. So yes, disaster for them, but man, they made a lot of people laugh that night. But why go to a restaurant to eat something you could get at home?